everybody.
Hello.
Welcome back to another episode of Tandem Fandom. I'm Mick.
I'm Courtney.
And welcome to our second episode of War with Words, a Monday night retrospective.
That's where we discuss one of the most influential periods of wrestling history, the Monday Night Wars, the battle between WWF Raw and WCW Monday Nitro. Without
further ado, let's dive right in. So, Raw this week, I think, was quite the improvement from the week before.
Yeah, it was just so slow and vanilla the first week that we started watching, but this one really picked up, which, you know, we said might happen because they're going into
King of the Ring. This is
the final round of the King of the Ring tournament.
Yeah, this is the go-home for that, and I think they opened super strong with Stone Cold Steve Austin against Savio Vega, who... That was a great match.
It really was. It was
so great.
Knockdown, drag out, and it's really cool to be able to see Steve Austin be able to move.
No, absolutely. And
before injuries took their toll.
You know, it's one of those things where I kind of look at that. I watched his performance then, and I know how he performs after the injury to his neck, and I kind of question, would the hero and legend of Stone Cold Steve Austin have been the same had he still been able to work the way he did, because it was much different. Would he have been a bigger star? Did the fact that he became a brawler help his character?
Ultimately, I think it did. I mean, really, with his character and how it became, especially with his battles against Vince McMahon, and just his hard-ass, everyman, boots-to-asses attitude, I think it helped.
I do too, because I don't think you want, because he was a really good hand and he had, good ability. I don't think it's the same if he's not just stomping a mud hole and walking it dry.
Because what can the demographic that he really reached relate to? Old back, old hips, old knees.
Exactly.
But still kicking ass. He was a hero.
Yeah. In terms of the next match, Mark Miro versus Owen Hart, again, fantastic match. It was really strong, and this is something that I'm glad we saw it on the go home, especially because they let Owen shine a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because the match with Yoko, we said, was just...
There's only so much you can do.
Absolutely. But he and Miro put together an excellent match. And it was entertaining, and then, Owen beats him down after Miro wins, and Stone Cold's on commentary, but that was something that was still kind of odd, to where he just stopped being on commentary. I don't remember an exit point.
I thought it was odd that he literally finished the match and sat down, sweaty, nasty, put on the headset.
Yeah, that was a little...
It was weird.
That was a little strange. And then we thought we were going to get a Aldo Montoya match, but Jerry the King Lawler decides to get in the ring and show us what he was going to do to the Ultimate Warrior, McMahon!
So, he beats him down, and we get classic crazy king face.
Yeah,
over the top.
Beats the hell out of him. I think the Savio Vega Austin match was great, but I think the match I enjoyed the most was probably Goldust against Jake Roberts in the main event, because one, the Intercontinental Champion, as Kevin Owens would say, was in the main event. So we're seeing something that I kind of criticized them for last week of there was no champion wrestling on the show.
And who was the Intercontinental Champion?
Goldust. So
gold's a good color on him.
Absolutely, and the whole belt was gold. The entire belt was gold.
The leather and everything, kind of like they did with the World Championship in the early 2000s, where it kind of changed depending on who had it.
Yeah, and it was great because it was a good match, and Goldust just had so much heat, and he and Jake went out and had a good match, which Goldust won through ill means by use of gold dust.
Gold dust.
I was like, that's a little on the nose, don't you think?
I don't think they ever actually said it.
Okay.
They never actually said it. I was just sitting there like, gold dust, use gold dust.
But, you know, they overturn the match and give the victory to Jake Roberts.
Because poor Jake, he's, you know, writhing on the mat, and it's glitter. He's just covered in glitter. It is stuck to his face and his eyes.
It was so bad. Oh, man. But
so the ref sees it, and he's all like, wait a second, this isn't natural.
Which was a nice little turn of events. On the other side of the coin, WCW, again, pretty solid on the wrestling, but even with this being a Fallout show, I don't know, this is a really weird thing to say, none of the matches felt like they had a sense of urgency or importance, like there was much. Well, that's not true. I do think Stevie Ray against Rick Steiner, I feel like that one had
that was
definitely
had some juice. Well, again, like the Steiners and Harlem Heat, like I'm loving watching them wrestle because they just they bring it to the ring, and it was furthering the storyline because you know last week we saw Booker T and Scott.
Yep.
And so this week we're getting the other half fighting each other, and then of course Booker T comes in and beats up Rick, and then Scott has to come in and save his brother, and so obviously we're getting a pretty good tag team match later on. Which,
again, it's really cool, and it's one of those things, and we'll get there in a second with the main event, because Scott was in it, which, looking at the performance that he was, and how the crowd reacted to Scott, I was like, man, this guy, he was really becoming a star, like, big time. The Disco Inferno. You want to talk about that one? No? The Disco Inferno and Joe Gomez, that was...
And, you know, I look back at stuff that we've said in earlier videos, and you would think, or stuff that I've said in earlier videos, you would think Disco Inferno would be right up my alley.
Yeah.
But
he's very like Fandango in many ways, I think. No?
If he were Fandango, it would be a lot better. Fandango is what he should have been. But, oh my god, this guy was the worst. He was the worst. And he wasn't that great in the ring either. And, ugh.
Well, we also got Arn Anderson.
But Joe Gomez won, so.
Yeah. Arn Anderson and Chris Benoit representing the Four Horsemen against American Males. American Males. The team of Scotty Riggs and Marcus Alexander Bagwell.
That's so weird.
And there was you had a...
You could say Marcus was pretty buff.
He was a little buff. He's too buff and Riggs is too fat. Like, that's what he ends up doing. Yeah, that's his thing later when they split and everything. Yeah.
That'll be fun.
I'm too buff and he's too fat. Like, it's a little ridiculous. But you specifically wanted to shout out about Arn Anderson's shirt that he was wearing.
WWE. I need you to go back. You're having a great time making these, like, legend t-shirts and stuff now. I need you to recreate the shirt that Arn is wearing in this episode, because it is so metal and it is so awesome. It is like, it's got the horse and it's the Four Horsemen and like the big Roman numeral, and it's like an Iron Maiden like album cover. Like, it needs to be like a blacklight poster. It is so cool.
It is pretty cool, and you know, this was a pretty solid match. Of course, the Horsemen, you're not gonna win clean at this point, and Benoit, holy cow, he was beat to hell from the pay-per-view.
Yeah, like it was a fight. Apparently.
Yeah, like backstage, it was a legitimate fight between Benoit and Kevin Sullivan that they had over the fact that Benoit and Woman of the Four Horsemen were essentially having kind of an affair. So Kevin and Chris just fought legitimately. But you know, we then got the Big Bubba against John Tenta match. And there was a loaded sock involved in the match, which you know,
loaded sock.
It was an okay match because Tenta won, and you know, he waxed Bubba with the sock, and this whole feud is just, I'm not into it.
Yeah.
You know, nothing against Big Bubba and John Tenta, but it's one of these like really, here's the random Dungeon of Doom crony, former crony in Tenta and current crony in Big Bubba battling it out. Yeah, I mean, maybe
He's not a fish. I don't know.
Of course, I liked Bubba's promo the week prior where he's like, John Tenta, you say you're not a man. You say you're not a fish, that you're a man. And it's like, well, wait a minute.
Botchamania.
But, you know, you got at the top of the hour, Macho Man, Randy Savage, and Ric Flair, which was a pretty great match.
Yeah.
Of course, Flair wins via Four Horsemen tomfoolery, as it were. But it was a solid match for me. Match of the night was Dean Malenko, Rey Mysterio, in a rematch from the Bash. Great, solid match.
Which is awesome because, you know, like you said, it was a rematch from the Bash, so they already put on a show. And they're coming out and doing an immediate rematch and putting on another show, and it was a fantastic match. I mean, you know, Ray always brings it, but I've never really seen Malenko wrestle as much, but it was...
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I think they are building Malenko to look really strong as a cruiserweight champion and really helping develop that division pretty well. And, you know, seeing with the addition of Rey Mysterio, he's this young, talented individual, but Malenko, in a lot of ways, just kind of feels like in control of the division. And it's really good. The main event was Scott Steiner and the Giant, and this is, you know, I don't know what there means, Gene. She looks pretty upset. You better take care of her. I respect all women.
Sorry, I'm getting my Steiners confused.
Yeah.
This is a completely different guy,
must
right?
Must have been some other guy. So, Scott Steiner against the Giant in the main event, and, you know, Scotty comes out, he's got his ribs taped up, and he was also...
I don't know if the tape was cold...
But he was blasting some nips. Big time. Like, he had, like, his singlet, there was no coverage. It was literally like, boom!
Yeah.
So...
2 weapons in the ring.
You know, and that obviously is the most important thing that you can take from this match.
Yes, if you have nothing else, be sure you cut to that entrance.
And look at Scott Steiner's nips. No. So, this was your pretty standard Giant match.
Right.
You know, he's big, he's strong.
He's throwing him around. But Scott Steiner actually gets a pretty big move off, and to see the crowd's reaction is just, it's worlds away from now because there's so many high spots. Like, if a match doesn't have it, people are disappointed, but when you use them sparingly, you get this amazing pop and this anticipation, and that's exactly what they did because
he suplexes the Giant, and the crowd exploded.
Jumps out of their chairs, you know, and it's something that you see now. You know, people suplex the Big Show, people suplex the big guys, but
at that point you didn't see that.
Yeah,
and that's the amazing
thing. Feat.
Yeah, I think when that happened, at least how I felt, I looked at that moment, I looked at that crowd. Knowing what I know with Scott Steiner and who he becomes and how the push he's given, I looked at that, and in that moment I thought, if I'm watching this live, Scott Steiner needs a push.
Right.
Scott Steiner should be getting a television championship or maybe a U.S. title, or it's time. I looked at that and I was like, this crowd's behind him.
Right.
He's got it all. He needs to be doing something more than tag teams.
Right, and maybe that was the intention to see, you know, because of course the Giant ends up winning.
Yeah.
But it was a huge pop, and maybe that was the rub, was do this spot and see if it gets you over, and it totally did.
Well, and again, with the knowledge that, you know, the NWO is incoming, that we have that because looking back at it.
Right.
So... And I know WCW probably had that in mind. They were like, no, we can't really push Scott because we're going to have to focus on Nash and Hogan and Hall and bringing in all these NWO members. So that's unfortunate, despite the NWO changing the business.
Right.
Because looking at it, I was like, man, what would have happened? Like, had that not been, or had it been later down the line, like, I really do. Like, when that crowd exploded for that suplex, I was like, they should have really grabbed this moment and capitalized on it.
Yeah.
In terms of the overall feel of Nitro based on their segments, the one thing I got from this show was what you're watching right here, right now, tonight does not matter. But you need to go and watch the Great American Bash recap on pay-per-view tomorrow night. Like,
yeah,
that was...
they spent so much time at the intro of, you know, recapping and saying what happened. Even Eric Bischoff wasn't on commentary because he was viciously attacked by...
At the Bash by Hall and Nash, these outsiders. I mean, that's one thing that they, you know, christened the Outsiders. But... this show, it just didn't feel like it mattered. This show really didn't, and they constantly seemed to remind us that it didn't by... You know,
watch the replay. This is, you know, this is what you missed. Don't miss it again.
Yeah. And, you know, they covered a little bit of what happened at the pay-per-view with Fire and Ice against the Steiners, with Big Bubba against John Tenta, which, again, where you saw what we see today and like, oh, these guys had a match at the pay-per-view? Let's do that same match on Monday night and squeeze blood out of that set again. Rey Mysterio, Dean Malenko, that was a, you know, rehash. The Steve Mongo McMichael joining the Four Horsemen, I don't even think he was actually on the show, though.
No, they just announced it.
Yeah, they just said what happened, but he wasn't there. Kevin Green wasn't there. The Outsiders weren't there. Deborah was there, and she was in the dress now, and she was walking around, but yeah, it just, it felt lackluster, it felt flat, especially compared to Raw, which, you know, they did the British Bulldog and the Shawn Michaels segment where they're fighting in the ring, and, you know...
Going back to Raw, we forgot something. We called the 900 number. What was Brian Pillman doing?
He was signing his WWF contract.
What?
It's unreal. You know, we called the number. We got a hint that there may have been a contract signing in the future for Flying Brian Pillman.
And lo and behold, it was.
Yeah, and it was... I kind of like
$1.50 well spent.
Yeah. In 1996.
Which means it was like $20 now.
It means you could have gotten a whole tank of gas. But it was a cool little segment. They had the contract signing and everybody was sitting around and Pillman gives his speech and he got a little emotional and teared up. And it was really cool. I liked it a lot. They also announced the guest referee for Shawn Michaels against the British Bulldog at King of the Ring.
Who was it?
Well, let's just say it was the perfect choice! Mr. Perfect!
Oh my gosh. There's going to be no shenanigans in that match.
Not at all. He's going to call it right down the middle. He's going to call that match perfectly. But, you know, it was cool, I suppose. They held it to right there at the very end, but... on WCW, there were some positive notes on segments. Your favorite segment of the night, the teasing.
Ending on a high note.
A new superstar on the rise.
Some sort of like ice ninja.
Blood runs cold. Glacier. Glacier is coming. Glacier.
Apparently they have some sort of contract with like NetherRealm Studios and I'm...
Watching it, you're looking at it, you're just like, this is Mortal Kombat 100%.
I don't know if like copyright laws were different back then, but...
Yeah, because I gotta tell you, they're
representing the Lin Kuei.
Glacier. I'm waiting for like Camel Spider to show up and be like, please come over this way. You know, that, I think that would be a little much.
Camel Spider, sorry, that got me.
Another thing that I thought really hurt WCW was the lack of Sting. There was no Sting.
There was no Sting. We got double Sting last week, and we get 0 Sting this week. What do?
We needed... there was no Sting. There was no Luger, but I guess the trade-off was we got Macho Man.
That's true.
You know, which we'd only gotten him in kind of like a vignette previously, so... still, I felt like there was... his presence was needed. At least somewhat on the show to maybe come out, cut a promo, say something, do something,
right.
but just to not be there. On the more somber side, the WWF did pay respect to Dick Murdoch, who had passed. So that was really cool of them to do that, paying respect to Dick, and
especially because news didn't travel as fast as it does now. If somebody passes now, I get like 5 notifications on my phone, but it's really the only way that you let the fans know you pay respect to the man as a wrestler, and share that moment with the universe as they still do.
Yeah, and it was a really cool moment. It was really cool of them to do. In terms of everything else, I thought Raw was of course the announcement to face these outsiders was at the end of the episode of Nitro, and they announced Team WCW, which Mean Gene kind of started saying like, oh, they determined it through, win-loss record and this and that and the other, and they pulled names from Hulk Hogan, the Giant, Ric Flair, Lex Luger, Sting, the Macho Man, Randy Savage. I believe they may have added a couple more, maybe the Steiner brothers. I can't remember, but they assembled a team of Lex Luger, Sting, and the Macho Man, Randy Savage, which it's a win-loss thing. Wouldn't you think that the world champion would be the guy to represent?
Yeah.
Oh, not to mention, he's a giant! So, that's a little odd. I mean, of course, looking back and the knowledge we do have...
It's like, why didn't they choose Hogan for their side?
Would the moment have been bigger if they had chose Hogan?
And then an in-ring betrayal. Ooh.
Yeah. I think... when you look at it and they didn't choose Hogan, it's kind of like, why wouldn't they choose Hogan?
Yeah.
That's odd. But nobody thought anything of it because you're like, well, Luger and Sting, they're the tag champs at the time.
They crunched numbers and it was very scientific.
Yeah, apparently. But I think Raw was the superior show. I mean, they had the strength of going into a pay-per-view.
Yeah,
so,
which is what Nitro had last week.
Yeah, but when you look at the ratings, and this week is very important because the previous week was the last week that Raw won. I mean, there's a few times where they tie, but for over the next couple of years, Nitro wins consistently in the ratings.
Always above, which is wild.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Like I said, there's a few moments in which they tie, but for the next long stretch, Nitro reigns supreme in terms of the ratings. With that knowledge, do you agree? Should Nitro have won the viewers this week?
This week? I don't think so. I think it was definitely Raw.
I have to agree with you 100%. Last year it was unanimous, or last episode it was unanimous for WCW. This week, I believe it's unanimous for Raw. Raw was a better show. The wrestling was better quality. I thought their storytelling was much more improved. Their segments were a lot cleaner.
There was actually an introduction to the show. Yeah,
which was really nice. Vince didn't seem to be as harsh and loud on commentary. Oh, God! Although, credit where it's due, Nitro's commentary was good this week too, because of the lack of Bischoff. I thought Shivani was a nice counterbalance to Heenan.
Right.
And he wasn't screaming. So that was a nice change. But absolutely, Raw wins this week. This week. But next week, who knows? The biggest issue I had with Nitro is the lack of importance that the show had.
Yeah.
And the lack of Hall and Nash. I would have liked to have seen them again and not have been told repeatedly, well, you missed everything at that pay-per-view, go watch it.
Right.
Because if you want to do that, do that. Make the pay-per-view important.
Right.
But don't rub it, I don't know, I guess there's no good way, because it's like you have to do that to make people go, oh man, I missed something.
I should have pinched my pennies a little harder
Yeah.
and bought it. You know, it always comes back to me like, what if you can't afford it?
Yeah.
Don't make your audience feel bad for not.
Well,
just reward your audience for doing it. Like make something like, oh wow, you know, I was a part of this moment because I bought the pay-per-view. Don't say you weren't a part of this moment because you didn't buy the pay-per-view. You suck.
Well, what they could have done, and they kind of did this a little bit, but some of the booking for the show was a little unusual because they did say, well, you have an opportunity to buy the pay-per-view tomorrow night on, so on and so forth, but they gave you Dean Malenko against Rey Mysterio.
Again.
For free. Big Bubba against John Tenta for free. You had Benoit and Arn Anderson in action. So, what's the incentive? You've just seen 2 matches in,
right.
The Cruiserweight title and Tenta and Big Bubba. Why the hell would you buy it? You've seen 2 of the matches. The big switch with Mongo.
Maybe
Luger didn't win.
Maybe you want to, videotape it and you didn't have your VCR set up last night.
That's true. It is important. You got to have those tapes. That's how you do your tape trading, so you can get those ECW and that 94 J-Cup matches you want to see. That's how you had to do it back in 96. Well, guys, thanks for tuning in. Let us know how you voted. Do you think Nitro was better, or do you agree with us? Was Raw the better show for this week?
I'm super excited for next week. I'm really excited to see who wins the King of the Ring tournament.
Who could it be?
Who is this Glacier?
I know, that's what we're coming on top of. What will be these outsiders of WCW? What are we going to start seeing them do?
Who's going to be their third? Because they can't go against Luger, Sting, and Macho by themselves.
There's no way. They've got their third buddy. He's here, and we know who he is. Is Mr. Eric Bischoff going to be in good health after?
Is he okay?
How is Mr. Perfect going to call the main event?
Is he even trained to be a ref?
Is he going to call it right down the middle? Is he going to call it with perfection? Tune in next week for the answer to all these and much, much more here on War with Words, a Monday night retrospective. As always, please like, subscribe, share, and comment on the video.
Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.
We appreciate everybody's feedback, and as we always say here on Tandem Fandom, if you're going to be a fan,
bring a friend.